So we are now live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Work 2025, Remote, Dynamic, and Modular. So, with the increase in digitalization and the uptake in transformation of digital transformation, a lot of changes been happening. The pandemic has brought in a new reality, and the world as we know it is now rapidly changing. And so is cybersecurity. To further deep dive into these topics and to express how work has now become more remote, more dynamic, and more modular, we have Mr. Baljinder, who would be moderating the session. He's a Senior VP, Global Head of Digital Transformation and Chief Information Officer for EXL Services. Joining him on the panel, we have Mr. Rishi Rajpal, VP, Global Security, Concentrix, followed by Mr. Rishi Mehta, Senior Director, Technology for Target, and finally Mr. Ajit Menon, Head of Information Security for TCS. Mr. Baljinder, I'll request you to initiate the session, and over to you.
Bajinder, I guess your system is still on mute. Request you to kindly unmute.
Hey, Anand, if Baljinder fixes it, and since if we are already connected with the participants, should we just start off and have Baljinder just join?
Sure. I think that would work. To Rishi Mehta, I request you to lead the discussion and just set context, and we can follow through from there.
Sounds good. Hey, and hello everyone, and good evening, and welcome again to this session on the remote or the work of 2020 in 2020 and 2025. Thinking remote, thinking dynamic, thinking modular. We are having some logging troubles with Baljinder. I'm hoping he should be able to join soon and start with the help with the moderation of the session. But we thought we'll get started. We've got Ajit, Rishi Rajpal, and myself on the panel, and we thought we'll kick it off with something which is very common to all of us as we are the times that we are living in today, right? For the last 9 months, how are we thinking, or what are some of the learnings we've had? What are the fundamental shifts that we are seeing in our ways of working, in our ways of business? And we could kickstart with our views around that. And maybe I'd request my friend Rishi Rajpal to start off with that, and then we could chime in. Rishi, does that work?
Yeah, Rishi, Ajit, can you hear me all right?
Perfect. We hear you, man.
Okay, so learnings have been immense during this period, right? So, and I think I had the opportunity to share my learnings with a lot of my friends. And credit goes to CISO community, OEMs, and forums like PSCI, NESCOM, right? Which kind of formed a community so that we can learn from each other. There's never been a time where in any kind of crisis where we have picked up the phone and spoken to each other as we have done in COVID-19, and we've kind of shared some of the best practices with each other to make sure that our workforce can be enabled to work from home securely. So my learnings primarily have been, we have thousands and thousands of people working from home, taking calls or processing back office work. So the imperative that I had was, how do we make sure that people are enabled to work from home, and at the same time we provide the same level of security as we would have provided in bricks and mortars. So I think from that regard, we started our journey, and obviously nobody had time in their hand. So we really had to come out with a model which works, which scales, and provides a level of monitoring to us, so that we have some visibility on the endpoint. Just to give you some statistics, everyone, I think when COVID hit us, I think we would, and this is some of the metric, not my organization, it was 350 million devices we're managing. And as for the latest metric, it's by 1.3 billion, which is like devices have gone exponentially high, which means the work for us has increased a lot. So And there were a lot of nuances, right? So how would people connect to Wi-Fi? How would people connect to, if you were sending desktop, how will you connect to the local uh, router? Those were part of the problems. But I think as a team and as a group, as a community, we got together and I think overcome that challenge. And from a shift perspective, I think we are seeing a shift. Uh, Now, since everybody is working from home, my personal myth has been busted also because I'm a strong believer that bricks and mortar is the place to work. But I've been working successfully for last 9 months and able to deliver. So I don't see everybody coming back as our customers are also looking for work at home options. So there might be a mix and match, but I think with government chiming in and removing some of the regulatory requirements that we had from work at home, I think this model is here to stay. Now we have to be finding innovative solutions to make sure that it exactly matches bricks and mortars, and some of the aspects of physical security are also mitigated as we go along this journey. So, Baljinder, thanks for joining in. I think you were discussing the first question.
Great. Greetings, everyone. I hope you can hear me well now.
We can hear you, Baljinder.
Yes, we can.
Great. There's a little bit of background, but this is good. I think there was some connection error, but nonetheless, we are into business here. What we're going to do in our panel discussion is, talk about the pandemic triggering a long-term shift. So I know, my colleagues already started. We will weave that in very quickly. But our intent in this panel discussion is going to be discussing the work from 2020 to 2025, basically traverse a journey from the start of this year when the pandemic broke out to all of us in our respective global organizations working on the business recovery aspect, and then to the industry shifts. This has pivoted, for future of work as such. So, just to sort of broadly put 2 or 3 points out there for everybody. In 2020, we've already witnessed shifting of maybe 10 or 20 of our offices where we used to work, and it could be 50 offices in somebody's case, to thousands and tens and thousands of remote offices, which are the remote home user offices or remote employee offices. So the fact is that the remote part of future of work has already landed. Therefore, the work type is also becoming modular, which means can we sort of do this, in collaboration between various work employees who are doing this remotely. And then there is still an expectation for a lot of this to come back to office once things stabilize. So it will be dynamic, and we will need a capability to work from anywhere. So we will be talking about how do we collectively address the paradigm of distributed workforce, and how the work evolution from 20 to 2025 will have aspects related to obviously organization environment, but culture, how the global talent pools will be leveraged, how flexible work environment will be, how we will see virtualization of several functions, and then acceleration of digitization across many facts. I think last but not the least, the information security, which is our core subject here. That landscape is also changing in the new world that we work in. We all have rapidly implemented and actually complemented, if I may say, our existing strong on-premise security technologies and controls, which once we used to call as parameter or the parameter, with now the next-gen intelligent and logical controls to enhance resilience and take on the next wave of emerging threats that we are. So with that context, let's commence our panel discussion. Great that we were already on, but let's just talk about in that sequence. So Rishi Rajpal, I think you were already talking about the learnings and shifts that we had in 2020, related to business and work environment. Were you done, or were you still talking about that?
No, I was almost done, Baljinder, and I think some of the shift I was just talking about is one is obviously moving your asset at home and extending their boundaries, office boundaries to at homes. But we also see an evolution of new models like gig economies, where one person may not even work with one organization, he may work with multiple organizations, and those organizations may compete with each other, with millennials coming in. So, and we already see a lot of platforms being offered to people like, so that they can enable people to work like that. With those, some of the trends, I think foundational aspects of information security becomes really key. And I think we all as a community have done a lot, I would say, to make sure business continues to work with with maximum amount of security we could, based on the time we had in hand. And now it's the time we continue to innovate and enhance that.
That is sound, Rishi. Thank you for those thoughts. Rishi Mehta, if I was to sort of come to you next, and building on those broader shifts or learnings that the other Rishi just talked about, what are some of the technology and security trends that you see accelerating 2021 onwards? Because if we were to traverse 2020 to 2025, a lot of these trends are going to sort of carry on, just not for a year, but for the next 3 to 4 years.
For sure, Baljinder. Firstly, let me say again that we are super happy to see you here. It was quite a little bit of a scare to not have the moderator in our midst. So we are extremely happy to see you here, and good evening again, everyone. Baljinder, as we talk about 2020, 2025, one thing that this period has absolutely told us is you can plan, but all good plans will get challenged, right? And thus the process of learning continues every day. I'll talk a little bit about what fundamental shifts we are seeing in our business, in our workforce, and thus based on that, what have we learned so far? Because I think that will help us lay the foundation of how we as an organization are going to work in the years to come in the future as well. Now, so look, we are a retailer. We're one of the most loved retailers in the US, and our biggest shift, most visible shift, was in terms of consumer patterns. When you think of consumer patterns, and while February sounds like eons back now, but in February 2020, we were still pretty much business as usual. And then March happened, right? And we saw a sudden spurt of essentials being stocked and so on and so forth across the landscape of our stores. And as the months progressed, we saw this huge spurt on the digital side of our business. Now, as some of you may know, at Target, we are 1,800 plus stores across the geography in the US. And we saw, in addition to the stores, there was a huge surge in volumes on our digital businesses, with consumers, our guests, looking for home office kind of work, home-related purchases, and so on and so forth. As things progressed, we saw an increasing trend for our guests to leverage services which were related to fulfillment, right? On how do they want the items delivered to them? Do they want to pick it up at store? Do they want something to be shipped to them the same day? And we saw a huge surge in that. As these consumer trends change over these short span of 6 months or so, we believe our constant anchoring on our core strategy helped us stay through those times. Because what was happening in this period, and what I spoke about were the consumer trends, but then when you think of the tech side of it, when you think of the technology side of it, our digital channels, for example, saw volumes, digital fulfillment saw volumes which we would have anticipated 3 years out from now. We just didn't see those volumes coming in now. And I think when we come to our learnings, we'll talk about how we as an organization were able to sustain that, were able to manage that. But we did see huge changes or shifts in those services. And these were to the extent of like the same day services of fulfillment went up by about 270%. Our digital sales went as high as 195% quarter on quarter as compared to the past quarter. So these are things you do not anticipate, right, in a business as usual. And thus my initial point on saying that the learnings continue. Now, while all this was happening, like I said, we have a huge footprint of stores across the US. And we realized that our guests love coming back to stores as well. And more than 90% of our sales involve the stores in some shape and form, either guests coming in or the stores being used as fulfillment hubs. And that overall, between these three trends, we saw a huge shift from a business standpoint. While all of this was happening, the workforce itself, right, come March, Target in India, and we are in Bangalore in India, we all moved to a work from home model. For us, it was not a drastic shift in terms of what we needed to enable this move, because given the scale and nature of business that we do, we were already enabled for remote working. And thus we were able to quickly pivot and move to a place where our technology and information security processes were ready for us to enable that work from home for our team members. So barring a few which had to be in office, we were able to enable work from home for our entire workforce.
Rishi, that is actually quite a interesting insight, because when I talk to a lot of other colleagues in the industry, including some of the other co-panelists here, I hear that a lot had to be heavy lifted during this period, and it's encouraging to know that a global organization like yourselves was advanced, geared up for this. Some people tell me that we actually moved 30, 40, 50,000 users or employees remote during this time, and the borders just shifted, and that sort of gave the should I say acceleration into some of these new trends, like moving technology stack onto cloud, use a lot of SaaS capabilities, edge security or the EDR solutions becoming relevant, and then zero trust, should I say, framework or architecture, which was already there, becoming pervasive across the organizations. So I think I would just want to sort of build on what you just said, Rishi, and go to Ajit. So Ajit, if some of these advanced technologies that I just sort of outlined, if they emerge and continue to sort of explode, things like zero trust, EDR, SaaS, cloud first, I think there's going to be a lot of data proliferation because all these technologies sitting on endpoints or on the machines of various employees, consumers, is going to open up a lot of data. So do you see that there's going to be then a challenge between security and privacy, and balancing that will become a problem?
Yes, Brigitte. Actually, when we talk about security imperatives, and again, I know that professionals like to stick to their domain. We have privacy champions who do advocate things in a particular way, and our security experts do love to try and get every byte out of a machine back so that they can analyze and be sure. Now, I would like to make one differentiation here. When we talk about organizations who actually implement a lot of these tools to monitor, be it a customer like what Rishi is representing, or Rishi Rajpal and myself representing the providers here, we are very different from the Facebooks or the other companies which just try to pick up everything that you can think of. Okay? So the privacy aspects there versus in the organization context is a little different, but the way people look at it, they look at it in a very common manner. They expect exactly the same thing. They expect you not to have any kind of controls. But at the same time, if you today go back to any employee of any organization here and ask them that if you want to do a banking transaction, would you do it from be comfortable doing it from a personal laptop, or would you think your company laptop is more secure? And I think the answer is evident. Yeah. So they want you to secure everything. They want you to have a lot of tools so that their activities are secured. But at the same time, the same person feels that you intruding into the privacy is a bit too far, is going too far. Especially now when people are at home, people tend to I know there are organizations who say that we would like to do some kind of video monitoring. Now, that's a challenge in itself. Customers say we would like to see where the associate is working from. Unlike the West, where people have or people create workspaces for themselves at home, that's not true for the larger Indian community. Culturally, we weren't designed that way. So the privacy challenges are not just because of the technology part coming in, but also because of a lot of social cultural aspects within this country. And I think it's a fine balance trying to get to both. It's not very easy explaining it to the millennials, but I'm sure as we go forward and this becoming the new norm, we may reach some kind of a continuum because there is no absolute on security or absolute on privacy. That's $1 million question there as to which one precedes the other. Yeah.
Thanks, Ajit. I think that was great, because the fact is not only the regular consumer behavior, but even us as some of us as information security leaders are going to put some privacy challenges out there by putting these advanced technologies in the remote environment with the obligation of actually serving our organization or serving our client or serving some compliance needs or security monitoring needs, which then can trigger some of these privacy issues, and we got to balance them. Rishi Rajpal, I know you did a great job in starting and filling in a little bit when I was still dialing in or solving the connection error. I just want to sort of get join the dots with those learnings, which were in 2020, but more importantly, what will this evolve into, and how will this new business paradigm look like? Because as we sort of now head out into 2021 and time will fly, in the next couple of years, 2021 and 2022, what do you think is going to change in the business paradigm? I mean, do you see the governance of information security happening differently, or will the regulations change? Will the architecture change? Will we, be working differently in the partnership ecosystem? What do you think, Rishi Rajpal, if I go to you on this new business?
Thanks, Vandilda. I think there has to be a shift in the way we operate, right? So from an InfoSec, the governance model needs to be involved, and a disclaimer, like foundational controls remain the same. But as I said, right, we'll have to be really innovative. Things like basic hygiene, like patch management, updating software, pushing softwares, they were sounding really easy with our automated software when machines were bricks and mortars. They become a nightmare when people are at home, right? Things like physical security, we were taking for granted, especially ITES sector when we were bricks and mortars. We somehow have accepted that risk at back of our mind when people are working from home. And our customers too have accepted, because the show must go on. So there has to be innovation in that segment too, that how will we provide mitigations to some of the risk from a physical security aspects. Similarly, if you look at some of the technologies that we all were using and heavily relying on, like our SOC or our monitoring system or 24/7 monitoring of alerts, they were all at one place. They could all collaborate. They could all talk about latest threats, and they could all discuss and come to a conclusion. They're all distributed now. They're working from home. How will the technology enable those guys to work in that fashion and come to collaboration very often? So collaboration platforms need to involve. And similarly, so I'm just sticking to security for that matter. And all these certs that we were and regulation that we had to comply because of customer requirements, whether it was PCI, whether it was high trust, whether it was SOC, although these attestations have issued clarifications of remote audits, it is onus on us that we have to make sure that these are equally effective as they would have done bricks and mortars in true sense, right? We all know that remote audits can be successful, but I think it was done in true sense. So basically, security, keeping in mind security, not really ticking the box of compliance. So I think we'll have to stitch these stories together and come up with a framework so that security remains intact and paramount for the organization.
Rishi, Mehta, I just wanted to also have you join in this new business paradigm. Would you like to expand a little bit on, Rishi, Rajpal just talked a little bit about governance and regulations and compliance, but would you want to expand a little bit on other facets? Do we think a different architecture will involve? Is partner ecosystem going to change? Is talent profile going to change? Or any other dimensions that you see?
Sure thing. I think building on what Rishi said, I'd like to pick on one and build on one aspect of what he spoke about. That some of this is also not necessarily what you are doing now, but building on what you have always been doing. So when I think back on learnings and how we will not just manage this situation, but also build in the years to come, I think investments made in having an agile architecture, building architecture right from with the thought process in mind that this will be agile, we would be able to adapt, and more importantly, investing in the right set of teams to help make that architecture agile and adaptable is going to be key to success. One of the things that, for example, from a security standpoint, when you think of this current situation, right? And at Target, we believe that while of course, we want to be extremely specific about how we protect guest data and information, we want to do this in a most frictionless way. We want to be able to provide frictionless security to our guests so that the experience of shopping does not get hampered due to the need of security. But when you build these over a period of time, and we've been at it for the last couple of years, our ability to nuance, to make those smaller changes, to adapt to situations like what we have today, is far higher than something which we are creating out of the box. So frictionless security, I think, is one of those imperatives which will continue and continue to build upon. One of the other imperatives which I is personally very close to my heart, and I'm sure Ajit and Rishi will also relate to this, is the whole aspect of information security awareness and learning and training while all of us are remote and even otherwise. I think there is a great overlay of working on security training via employee engagement, right? Via team member engagement. Thus, you see a proliferation of aspects of gamification of security, which were there earlier as well. But in today's day and age, it becomes even more important and imperative that we focus on those aspects and really anchor ourselves to having a durable strategy and having some flexible teams which can adapt to the strategy on an ongoing basis.
Got it. You are talking about, in many ways, the future of work, or should I say the new business paradigm, more so with a security lens. I think I just want to sort of expand a little bit, if you will, that I also think that these collapsing of the physical boundaries that sort of existed, just not from security, but from a business perspective or future of work, will change a lot. I mean, we will see building virtual engagements with the teams, the collaboration capabilities and collaboration mechanism, as Rishi Rajpal earlier mentioned, will change. I also think mental and emotional well-being, of users and employees will become a big parameter, and so will the user experience. So I think the gamut may be a little bit broader than thing, which brings me to my final, thought or the lens that I wanted to look at this topic, and then we'll do a wrap. It sounds like that the information security leaders and community on this panel, which represent the industry at large, are all set and geared up for the future, which is great news. But how do you all, as security practitioners, strengthen the business and client confidence, as we enable this new hybrid or work from anywhere kind of environment, as we go through. So, I'll just give a little bit of cue from my own perspective and then perhaps ask Ajit to come in. I think the transparency and trust between the business and the security communities will have to significantly increase. In many organizations, it already exists, but then there are organizations where there's a little bit of that maker-checker mode, and a lot of things are known to the security side, which are not always transparently shared with the business. So I think that will have to change a lot, and there'll be no boundaries practically. It's also important that we share the risks and challenges transparently, and just not with the business. I think with the boards, with the audit committees, wherever the risk oversight is in our respective organizations. And then also, I think there is a need to co-create solution with our clients and the consumer, which is what the business ultimately wants. If we're going to be creating solutions that are relatively in the back end, and I'm not saying many organizations would not be co-creating, but I think they'll have to accelerate. So Ajit, I'm going to bring you in to tell us how would we be able to strengthen business and client confidence in the WFA security environment.
Thanks, Baljit. I think a very pertinent point as we go forward. We did have to go through this cycle in the late part of March, and as we started moving people from the brick and mortars to our home offices, etc. There was obviously a need for the customer also to understand why we are doing all this. Globally, we were impacted, they were impacted, everybody was going through a reel. But that's not going to be the story going forward. Okay? Going forward is a matter of choice. And I think 1 year is good enough for us to understand whether this model works or not. But again, it will really need a good amount of dialogue with the customers to renegotiate contracts. As you rightly said, there are so many controls that a customer typically talks about in a contract. It's going back to them and convincing them that we will be able to adhere to each of these and demonstrate, not just adhere in spirit, but also be able to demonstrate through audits and other parameters that we are doing exactly what is required, and it is secure to an extent that we could continue with this model. And I think the whole story lies there. Can we go back? Can we explain to them what we've done? How are we making sure that we keep evolving on this? There may be certain new challenges as we go, but it's not that the work from office was 100% secure. There were challenges, but we learned to live with it. And over time, we would want to do the same. See, work from home is not a new concept. In the West, it has always been there. Okay, the customers have been doing it for themselves. Now, it's a question of whether they want to also agree to a similar model for partners, which earlier they were not very comfortable with or not used to. So it is more of a mindset change. We can implement a lot of these controls. We can invest in everything. But it also depends on how the business on the customer side, or the security team on the customer side, or the commercial teams think about the whole ecosystem and then decide. Because there are benefits both sides. I think you touched upon many of them earlier. When you talk about a brick and mortar office, you are tying up where you can get good talent from. When you open up, you actually have a talent cloud. You can get the best of guys coming in from any location. You may not have an office in Gurgaon, but you have one good guy there. You can put him on the job. At any point in time, you can rope him in. He does the work, moves out, completes his activities, and so on. Now, there are merits, and I think it's all about how do we tell the customer that we can bring in those merits without compromising on any of the fundamentals, and security in that way being hygiene to a great extent. We're not going to be compromising on any of these aspects. So it's a component of a good dialogue that you need to have with the customer, a value proposition that gives them a rounded view of what is it you're trying to do, what comes to the table, and what is the kind of controls that you build in so that you are not asking me to compromise something just because you want to achieve a work from home strategy. So that's the whole concept, the way I see it.
All right. I think in about 40 minutes or so, this eloquent panel has, sort of navigated the journey from start of this pandemic to the industry shift that this has pivoted, for future of work. If I was just to quickly summarize maybe 4 or 5 things that we took away. First of all, I think the world is going to be a flatter place going forward. There is going to be convergence of what we used to call as shores, onshores, near shores, offshores, and now there's going to be home shore. But if you ask me, there is only one shore, which is a virtual shore, and that virtual shore will work seamlessly from a remote location as from an office location. I think second, the whole talent pool will shift. It will be much wider access and have location agnostic access to talent, whether it is specialists, part-timers, or flexible work modes will come out. I also think that there could be a better economics and value share change in the ecosystem, because if we optimize on the real estate and invest more on remote technology and security, there could be a better value that would come out. One thing is for sure that I heard from all of you, that many organizations were already prepared, but others will get better prepared for the resilience and business continuity. I also sort of saw the undertones of hyper innovation and, may I say, accelerated digitization that will happen, just not in information security but in business solutions, and then all the advanced technologies, then the IoT, the 5G. There'll be a lot of data analytics driven business models that will become pervasive in the industry. Last but not the least, all of this will sort of create a new business paradigm, and it's up to the security, privacy, risk professionals in the industry, to impart that essential confidence to their business counterparts, to their clients, to their stakeholders, so that everybody, collectively buys into this new model that we are all going to traverse from 2020 to 2025. It's been a great, discussion, and so good to connect with all of you virtually. I hope I'll be able to see you in person at some point in time soon. All the best, and thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baljinder. Thank you, panel, for so eloquently concluding the session. I will request the audience to move on to the other plenary sessions. And again, thanking all the esteemed panel. It was very informative and very educative. Thank you so much for joining us in the panel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.